So thanks for coming online. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm not a big PowerPoint fan. I like to get through things pretty quickly. So the goal is to go through this in about 20 minutes or so, and then turn it over to any questions that we have. My name is Jeremy Bikman, as you know, CEO of Katalus. I've been in the industry for quite a while in healthcare. And this is something that, this presentation on something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, and it's around customer loyalty, customer engagement, and just really the best ways to do it. And sometimes the best way to explain the best ways to do things is by looking at the main mistakes that people make, usually not on purpose, but it's become pretty prevalent. So that's what we're going to go through. And please, if you have any questions, you see my email, you can email, or better yet, as Sean said, use the little chat in your dialog box there. So within a little bit about us, I guess, before we jump in, our main goal is we work in healthcare. We try to help organizations with their existing customers, be it hospitals or be it their patients, with new customers, and to help sometimes around some consulting around M&A. But today we're really focusing on customer satisfaction and customer engagement and client loyalty. So enough about us. Some of the what's called the economics of customer loyalty, which is pretty important. As you can see by the slides here, kind of highlighted in this kind of pumpkin color. So, and I like numbers. I like things that I can readily identify. I think I've got just a little ADHD, and so I want to get to things as quickly as possible. So you'll see there 33%. So repeat customers spend 33% more. You see 6 times more in terms of the cost to sell to a prospect as opposed to the same customer, upselling there, which is really important. And that's where customer loyalty, the whole about promoters, becomes so important. 107% in terms of referrals. Obviously, that's very powerful. If you look at the fourth, there's not a number there. But it talks about unprecedented access right now that it is coming through social media, where people are out there, they're either promoting or they're really ripping down different vendors, and they're doing it very, very quickly and quite often as well. And then the last one is in terms of 90%. And anyone that's been in business for a while understands how important referrals are in actually gaining more business. And that word-of-mouth advertising is just absolutely critical to businesses right now. So a little bit about healthcare vendors when it comes to loyalty and the way things are kind of being done right now. It's really kind of an eclectic mix. You have people doing phone calls. Sometimes they're doing emails. They're trying to use focus groups, things like that. And that happens quite a bit. A lot of us have been guilty of that. And then things in terms of when data's coming in or feedback's coming in, the follow-up is usually handed over to a sales person or account management person. And sometimes that's a good thing, and a lot of times that's maybe not the ideal way to go about it. And then when you're looking at getting all the data back in, the analysis is pretty significantly manual labor, and a lot of it's by Excel. And then when you're delivering the data, it's death by PowerPoint, where there's endless number of slides and tables and charts and things like that that can be a little bit overwhelming or completely and utterly overwhelming. And you're seeing that promoter score really start to emerge. When I was at class for 7 years, it was brought up from time to time about that promoter score. And it's something that we've seen is that most people don't have a really great understanding of Net Promoter Score. They understand at a very, I would say, a surface level what it means. And definitely what we've seen is that most people don't actually use the metrics within Net Promoter Score appropriately or roll it out. We'll talk through some of that as we go further in this. So the first mistake that we've seen is when vendors do things that elicit a low response rate or cause a low response rate to happen. And sometimes even worse is that a low response rate is just accepted because that's what people are used to. We've seen quite a bit in different working with different vendors out there, many different conversations when they're talking about, well, we have a couple thousand different customers and we'll get a 10% or a 12% or 8% depending on the product line, depending on the geography, depending on the title, and that's what we're getting. And my question always is, well, how long is it taking you to get that? Not like, oh, it's months, we'll do it, and it'll be a 3-4 month process, and then we actually have the data. And we thought about it. Why do you get such a low response rate? Well, a lot of times it's because of the type of questions that you're asking and the sheer number of questions that you're asking, and then the vehicle or the pathway in which you're asking it. So in healthcare, there's lots of terms like workflow and proper pathways, terms like that. So when you're trying to get data, or you want good feedback and good engagement with the customer, how is it fitting in and mapping to their daily workflow? Is the pathway correct to minimize interruption in their day and maximize the overall utility that person's feeling as they're filling out that survey or giving that feedback? And that's the thing that we've seen again and again, why it's so long and laborious for someone to have to go through this. And so that's the first mistake, is doing things that are going to cause low response rate, or also that it's become acceptable to have a low response rate. And the second one is going to be on the low frequency, how often you're actually getting information. And I've been very surprised by how infrequent customer surveys are actually conducted. Conversation just last week with a large imaging vendor, and they were talking about how they put out their survey and they were pretty happy with it. And I asked them, well, how often are you doing that? And they said, well, we do it annual. It's an annual survey, and that's really what we base a lot of our decision making around, which I found interesting. So I asked them a question. Said, for your customers, how often are their needs changing, or how often are regulations changing, or how often are things happening in their hospital? And they said, well, it's happening all the time. And I said, well, for your business, is your business static, or is it pretty dynamic? And they said, it's pretty dynamic. Things are changing all the time. And my follow-up question was, so you think that getting one iteration from your customers, answering all these different questions, that's going to keep you really in tune with your business? And all I heard was silence on the other end of the line as it started to dawn on this vendor. Wow, we're only going once a year at a low response rate. We are really a little bit out of touch with what's going on. It's one of these things you see here, but if you're about satisfied customers, they can turn into unhappy customers, and then they have emails they're firing off to people they know. They're on Twitter, they're on LinkedIn, they're whatever focus or listserv that they're on, and it's going out there pretty consistently, but you're only hearing from your customer if something really bad happens, or if you're doing this survey once a year. There's too much time passes between a structured data gathering environment or a process when it happens. So it needs to be better. But part of it too is it's probably a good thing that most vendors that we've worked with or organizations don't do surveys more often, because almost every survey we've seen is too long, it's too generic, the questions are significantly repetitive throughout the survey document, and again, it just doesn't map, as I said before, to how that customer workflow or the pathway that would make it easiest for them and most enjoyable for them to participate and give you feedback, and that's an important aspect. So moving to the third mistake that we see is producing information that's just not that consumable. You see all those sticky notes there. No CEO, I don't think anybody wants to know the 34 most important things, because once you get to a large number, it's impossible to have the most important things. There's a saying out there that the enemy of great is good. There's lots of really good things that you can know, but there's few really great things or critical things that you can know. And it's just very difficult to navigate through dozens of different metrics and look at all those metrics, all those pieces of feedback, and know quickly, all right, we know what we need to do. We know the one or two things we need to do as a business. If you watch any of the or read any of the case studies from Harvard or Stanford or any other school out there, they always talk about focusing in. But when you're asking so many different questions, you have all this feedback across this enormous amount of latitude out there, or geography in terms of questions you can ask. You get that all back in. What do you actually do with it? How do you synthesize through all that white noise and find what's most important. We find that most of the businesses we work with, they simply can't do that. So if it's kind of crap in, crap out. You're asking a ridiculous number of questions. Now you have a ridiculous number of questions and answers to sort through to be able to say, here are the one or two things that we actually have to do. And when you force yourself to ask fewer questions right up front, it forces you to focus on just the critical. And then when you get that feedback, you now know exactly what you need to do. So some words that come to mind when I think about traditional research, whether it's from an external research company doing their different reports, or you doing your own research yourself: overwhelming, shock and awe, tsunami, drowning. And I see it as well. When I get it, maybe it's a little bit, I'm too extreme this way. When I have my guys come in here and we're working with a different vendor, or just in our own business, and they're coming in and they're presenting all this information to me, I say, hang on a second. I just want to know a couple things. Every time, just tell me the couple things. What's the issue? Don't give me a whole narrative and a big commentary. Just give me a few things, and that's critical. So again, focus on right up front on fewer questions, and that will make you focus on just the critical issues in your business or in your interactions with your customers, and they'll appreciate it. There's no doubt about it, your customers. The fourth mistake is the fatigue caused by surveys. You can see this thing here about bacon, and you can go through and give, I think, 10 different little options there. But a lot of the surveys that we see, the majority of them, they're not short. They're very, very long, and I've just alluded to and spent some time on it in the last mistake number 3, where it's 15 questions or 20 questions or 30. I actually got sent one from a company I'm on the board of, and I'm on the board of 3 companies. I'm not going to tell you which one. And it literally was a 6-page, it was online, a 6-page or 6-link or page, how you put it on the web, this survey feedback they want about their new strategy and their new messaging. And then each one of the pages, there were like 10 questions, and each one of those 10 questions was like this bacon, eggs, oatmeal, sweet, salty, runny, cold, where it was just unbelievable. When I got into it, I just quit caring. And so as I looked at it, and back when I was in class, I would see the same thing, is that there's so many different things that I can actually go fill out that I start checking out in terms of mentally. I just want to get through this questionnaire as quickly as I can, and I want to be done with it. And it's not just the number of questions that you're asking your customers, it's all the different, it's the other vendors that your customers have that they're hitting them with surveys. It's other external rating companies out there, research companies doing their reports. They sell and rank and do those sorts of things like that. So they're hitting your customers. And it just makes it incredibly difficult. And you have to think, and I remember someone telling me this when I, back in my former job, and I called up and I just like, hey, and it was a good friend of mine, a CIO, and I'm like, why you been so hard to reach? He said, hey, Jeremy, I love you, man. I love what you guys are doing there at class. But you got to understand, of the 50 things that I do in a day, taking a survey, a call from you to do, even you, Jeremy, who's a friend, to do a survey is about 75th on my priority list out of 50. And, which means basically, in surveys to you and any other research firm or my vendor, it's just so low down on my list. And I would talk to these people, so it got me started to think. And I would do lots of conversations with people's customers and just say, hey, how seriously do you really take these surveys when they come in? They say, you know what, I answer the first couple questions, and I put my thought into it, and then after that, I'm just trying to get through it. I said, over email you do that? He goes, yeah, email, web link, even when people are on the phone, I just want to get through it. There's no way I can spend that kind of time. I have so many things I got to do. I want to check out because I get so many surveys, or even if I don't get a lot of surveys, the surveys I get are just so incredibly long. I'm like, there's just no way. You didn't do your job on your end trying to filter down your questions, and now you're making me go through this kind of stuff. So take pity on me. And a lot of people feel bait and switch. Someone will call in or the email say, it'll only take you a few minutes. There's no way it's a few minutes. They're in there and it's page after page, and people feel misled. And it makes it hard to get repeat. You want to go back to these people again and again throughout the year or every year. But if you make it so difficult, they're going to be really hard to tie down. So if you wonder why, not just your response rates are low, but your repeat response or participants in your surveys, it's because you've kind of beat them over the head with it. It's not a good experience for them at all, frankly. So jumping to the last mistake, well, there's many mistakes, but the last mistake is lack of closing the loop. And Sean helped put this together, and so he put a great quote there. The only thing better than being unsatisfied is being ignored. And obviously, there's a major tongue-in-cheek there. You've got to give an option in your surveys for people to be contacted, because as they're going through these different questions that you have, and hopefully you're going to condense them down from now on, it's going to raise issues in their mind, or it's going to bring back some experiences they're having or something they're having now, and now they want to have a vehicle to contact you back. You need to give them the option somehow in it to be contacted right away about an issue. And then generally, you need to know what people are saying. Complete anonymity, I think, is fine for very generic, very type of ranking research that goes out there. But to run your business, you can't run your business on generic feedback where you can't identify what a customer said. Not so you can go back and yell at them or get upset. A lot of times, discretion truly is a better part of valor, where you need to hold back. You may get your spreadsheet, and you're going to look at it, and this customer rated you this, or put down these different pieces of feedback. You can sit back now as a team and say, hey, how do we change things generally as a business? But now how do we change things? The field service engineer, the customer service rep, the account manager, whoever, all the different people that would deal with this one hospital or this clinic, and sit down and say, okay, we've seen what generally we need to do as a business. We've seen kind of trends emerge. But for this customer, what can we learn from this now? How do we update this information and put together just kind of a quick, not plan of attack, but almost like a care plan for them based on that feedback? But if you don't know who they are, what they said, you can't do that. And I guess that's also why it's so critical, again, to limit the number of questions, make it way easier for customers and more enjoyable for them to participate, so you can get such a higher response rate, so you can build kind of a customer care plan for more and more of your customers. They'll have a better experience. They are much more likely to stick with you as a client. They're much more likely to buy. They'll be far less likely to try to push back and nickel and dime you back in terms of trying to get discounts out of you. So again, that frequency, this all flows together. You want a high frequency, you've got to make it easy for them. And then when you know who they are and what they're saying, you don't go back and get upset, even if they're really upset and they're trashing you in this research, but to sit and say, hey, how do we make things right? What have we done, and how do we put together the right care plan per customer? Not just generally. That's okay, generally, that's a good thing. But a great thing, sticking with the theme here, the good to great, is to do it individually and build a great plan with them. So I'm going to give a quick parting shot before we kind of jump into any questions anybody has. And I said it'd be quick, and I think we're pretty quick. I think I've only been going like 18 minutes or something like that. Is you see it there, you can't have it all. And it's amazing how, I guess, I don't know where it's taught in school, or it's just become such a tradition or custom where we can't break out of it, where you've got to ask so many questions. More is better. The more questions we ask, the better we are. And that is just not true. I've been in this business now for over a decade. I've done thousands of interviews. I've seen tens of thousands of data points coming in, and I've talked to thousands and thousands of individuals, vendors, hospitals, clinics. So I'm telling you that more is not better. More customers is better, but more questions is not better. So you can't have it all. You can't have tons of questions and have a very high response rate, get tons of respondents. You can't have tons of questions and then have the data come in quickly and timely in a nice flow of lots of participants. You can't ask tons of questions and have tons of questions and then want people, and then have those same people really want to respond again. You'll have to exert so much more time to do it. So my soapbox moment is, take pity on your customers and make it easier for them and funner for them to participate, and hence make it easier on you. Because when you are, again, I've said this two times now, I'll finish up with the third time. I guess third time's a charm. When you are limited, when you force yourself to limit the number of questions, you force yourself to focus on only the critical business issues that you have. And by doing it, you will get a higher response rate. You can build those care plans, and you can frankly build a better business. It really works. We've seen it time and time again, and that's what we're doing at this point. That's our story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyway, thanks for listening. Any questions at all, please, please ask. Go fire away. And I guess here's our little website. I got to do some plug for us. Here we have a solution that does some of this stuff. So I'll leave it at that. So any questions, please type it, email it, whatever you'd like to do.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Yeah, as he said, if you have questions, we've got a few that have come in already. Go ahead and type it through the questions dialog on the GoToWebinar interface. Jeremy, one question that came in is, what would you suggest if our company doesn't value customer loyalty as much as it should?
I'd probably update my resume and get it out on LinkedIn. That's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I guess if you're really committed to sticking with that vendor, I guess, I would have to, oh boy, I'd pull out some stuff from, I'd go read the most important question by Dr. Reichhold from Harvard Business, from the Harvard Business School. I would definitely, try to get a hold of a firm like us or someone like us or something like that to come in and do a quick chat or something to kind of turn things around. I would look at the phenomenon of Twitter. I mean, Twitter's isn't having the success it is and going everywhere and be used by businesses and individuals. Heck, I'm on it, and I don't have enough time to mess with it, but to mess with almost anything. But Twitter's emerged not because people have more time; it's because people have less time. Our society and societies in general are moving to in the generation that's coming up, and it's infecting everyone else, so to speak, is less time, and people want more information, but they want less amount of it. They want the quantity of the information in terms of the iteration is a lot more. I want little bites all over the place, but I don't want the bites to be big. As someone said, Chris O'Neill here, our COO, says, it's the difference between trying to take massive bites at the apple and sitting there chewing it as opposed to taking lots of little bites. That's where things are moving. So I would try to take that aspect, use some analogies to try to convince other executives, the top dogs, to look at it and say, we need to go down this path, and we do this because we want to get closer to our customers, and maybe even use an analogy like Apple. Apple only uses Net Promoter Score. They use almost nothing else out there other than those quick little bites at the apple to gauge customer loyalty. Some of the best companies in the world do it, Southwest and airline industries, et cetera. Customer loyalty and having a program and commitment to it and trying to really identify who is a promoter as opposed to who's a detractor is absolutely critical to business. There's article after article and case study after case study proving how critical it is to your business.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeremy. A couple of other questions. One person asked if there would be a recording of the webinar. The answer is yes. That'll be available before the end of the day tomorrow. We also had one request, Jeremy, for you to take a look at somebody's survey. So we'll certainly do that, but we'll have you do that offline.
And we're happy to email. So if you see my email address there, I can send these slides to you. It doesn't have my kind of annoying voice attached to it, but at least if you just want the slides without the voice, we can do that too.
Great, thanks. Another couple of questions that came in. You've hammered on this point a lot about shorter, faster, less questions, but it looks like a couple of people are still wondering how can we really learn what we need to know from just a handful of questions?
I think it's because you don't do a one-size-fits-all approach either. I mean, if you only could ask 2 or 3 or 4, 5 questions, whatever, across all the different constituents of your customer base, so the CIO and a chief medical officer and the CFO and that probably isn't. I mean, I would set a baseline of a customer loyalty and ask at least one question would be the Net Promoter Score question. But then after that, I would ask the CIO probably 2 questions, and then I would ask the CMO maybe 2 different questions, 2 or 3. And then the same thing with a department director or an analyst or someone else is to break it up. So you're still getting feedback, and you're still able to ask more questions, but you're asking specific to the role. And I guess I should say, and this is a tough transition. It was a tough transition for me. I mean, anyone knows where I came from class and other research, and every research firm I've ever met, it's not just class. They always think more is better. More questions, more questions, more questions. Because it's almost like the government, and new bureaucracy happens. You want it to surround itself with more people. They hire more bureaucrats. It's almost impossible to kill any new department or a new government agency that's brought up by a new bill. It's the same thing in a research company. What do you have in research? In a research company, researchers. They have stats people. So for them, it's just the amount of data points, the better it is. We can do all these. I was an economist. They took it in school, economics, did regression analysis, did econometrics, and so you'd want all these different variables, and so that's how your brain is wired. That's old traditional ways to do it. But you sit down, and I'm happy to do it, for free. I mean, just no, because I'm just passionate about it. I'm happy to review questions. And one thing that we do is we sit down. I encourage everyone to do it. Is sit down and say, what are you really going after? You're going out and doing a survey. What do you want to know? What's going on in your business? Let's talk about it. And when you start working through it, and we've done it many times. I mean, Sean, you were just on a call this morning, with one of our new customers. We're trying to go through it. We're walking through them, and they had a huge list of questions. And by the end of the 45 minutes, we were down to just 3. And, it's kind of a revelation moment to our new client where they're like, yeah, that really is it. This is what we want to do. So it is a change. And I'm not trying to minimize, and if I sounded, and I know I do, pretty dismissive and condescending sometimes to people who don't see my way of the world. But when you walk through it and you do it and you have to test, it's almost like a leap of faith. You find out that, yeah, less is actually more. There's a German, Steve Jobs talks about it, and we talked about before, there's a German, I wish I could remember his name, designer who talks about, and it's just a simple little German phrase. I can't remember how to say it in German, but I'll just say it in English. It says less but better. So it's the whole thing is on design, on everything. So it's just not design of a computer and design of a car, design of a house, but even down to design of a survey, design of questions. Less but better. So less questions, but make those questions better. And when you force yourself to only ask a few questions, you'll be surprised over time by how unbelievably powerful those few questions are, and then what you can do as a business. But it is a change. It is, and sometimes you just got to kind of pilot it. You can't just roll it out company-wide. You got to prove it to people, so you pilot it.
Jeremy, another question. By design, you didn't spend too much time talking about the Katalus solution, but somebody did wonder what healthcare customers have used the Katalus solution to this point.
Yeah, we don't want to say too much, but Microsoft has used it now, transitioned over to Paradigm as well. A company called Sectra is using it globally, and a host of other ones, but I don't want to say too much. Those are ones that have said that we can share right off the bat, so those are some of them.
Okay, looks like we don't have any other questions at this time, Jeremy, other than those that we'll follow up with directly. Any parting shots before we wrap up?
No, I just say, again, take pity on really empathize and sympathize with your customers, and treat yourself treat yourself good as well. And just remember that really less but better, and I'll end with that.
Great. Thanks very much, and thanks to everyone who's joined us today on the webinar, and that will conclude today's presentation. Once again, you'll be notified of the recording of today's presentation by the end of the day tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone.